Our next question is for Micah. Do you think series like 13 Reasons Why are helpful to addressing suicide, or are they more harmful?
Great question. I think it goes both ways. The positive thing about the book and series 13 Reasons Why is that it can ignite a discussion and education about suicide and specifically teen suicide. The downside can be the sensationalization around the afterlife of the girl who completed suicide. And, it focuses on a narrow narrative that implies that bullying leads to suicide. No one thing leads to suicide, and many people who experience bullying do not make an attempt for suicide. So I think on the one hand, it really opens up discussion opportunities and education opportunities and normalizes the discussion since it's in the media in that way. But there can also be a downside effect of really attaching on to the attention and sort of the story that's built up around this individual who completed suicide.
And I would just say I agree with Micah 100%. So I don't really have anything more to add than that. But yeah, the concern about the glamorizing versus information around it is a concern.
Our next question will be for Eileen. What will it take to reduce suicide rates?
Thank you, Kayla. And I'll say, wow, that's the multi-billion-dollar question that we all ask. And I'm not ashamed to say that I don't have the answer for that. I don't know what it will take overall to reduce or eliminate suicide, which would, of course, be our complete and entire goal. I do have concerns about the world we live in and our societies in dealing with constant pressure and stress. With technology, with increased lifestyles, a very fast-paced world we're living in, we are all under too much stress, too much pressure. That's how the world is now. And so we have to find a way to cope with that. And I do have concerns about that and its impact. We know that stress is negative physically. We look at cortisol levels and different physical issues, heart conditions, diabetes, other factors. And so we know it also affects us mentally in many ways. Stress can have multiple negative effects on our memory, our functioning, our cognition. All of those can play a part in suicide. And so, overall, I have that concern. And this is purely my personal opinion. I don't think that's helping the situation or helping to reduce it. One of the things that I think about that can help us, given the world we live in, is thinking about how we approach it and how we approach self-care. There is so much talk right now about self-care. We all need to practice self-care. And yet, what we see in our society, at least in American society, is that's not really supported. That behavior is not really supported. How do we approach or feel about our coworkers when they say that they need a mental health day? Do we foster that? Do we take that in with compassion, or do we criticize? What are they doing? They need a mental health day. You can hear sarcasm sometimes. So, and we are working in the behavioral health field. So we're not getting it right internally. So if we're not doing self-care in a positive way, how about the rest of the world? So we, as I think mental health professionals, need to lead organizations, lead the world in setting the tone for what true self-care is, what it should look like, and how people can reduce that overall stress in their lives that put them under so much pressure. And again, Micah said, suicide happens for many different reasons. My take on it is the society we live in is not helping that situation or any of the other situations we have to live in. So as far as tangible solutions, which is something I love, I think we as mental health professionals have to really start pushing the envelope and setting the tone for how we care about ourselves, being available, 24/7 on email, taking phone calls at every hour of the day. It's not mentally or physically healthy. So my hope is that maybe mental health professionals can start setting that tone with the rest of the world and teaching people how to take care of themselves physically and emotionally.
Great comments, Eileen. I think what you're touching on is the stigma. And there's so much stigma around mental health and suicide. It really adds an extra barrier in to be able to address and even talk about some of these issues. So it's an important point. I would just add, what does it take to reduce suicide rates? A whole huge effort. I think suicide is a public health issue. So eliminating suicide takes a collective approach through grassroots movements, government and educational institutions, physical and behavioral health institutions. It really takes a collective. And, some tangible things, universal screening for depression and suicide risk, safety planning, therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so there are, a couple things that we can do once someone's identified with having signs and some of the precursors to suicide, but it really is a collective effort.